I'm reading today from the book Path to Happiness and studying the keyword acceptance today, which is associated with the word dying and the 7 words, primary word yes. Acceptance is the procedure by which we come to own what is presented to us. It seals a relationship between giver and receiver. In this particular scenario, we are being offered safe passage from this world to the next by the angel of death. We have no say in whether to die, but most definitely we have the last word in how to do it, well or badly. Acceptance is what opens us up to the possibility of dying well. Firstly, let us consider what alternative there is to dying. Apart from a few advanced fakirs and yogis, for everyone ever born it would mean never-ending physical decrepitude, and therefore severe painful limitation, eternal torture. Death is release and relief, the most precious of all gifts, even included incarnated life. If we knew birth was a one-way ticket to perpetual physical torture, we would abstain. It simply makes no sense to shun death and fear it, because it is the one thing that makes the risk of incarnation bearable. What we resist is always inclined to push harder, and this is no exception. Yet whatever we wholeheartedly own finds its way somehow into our harmonious beingness. In order to own it fully, it will be very helpful to understand why we are dying now, and like this. This question why can be answered from the past or from the future. What gave rise to this, and what purpose does it serve? These questions are unlikely to be understood from the perspective of the ego, because the fearful ego is that which is about to be annihilated, and its primary concern is now and always has been to avoid annihilation. We need to identify ourselves not as a body that has a soul, but as the soul, which has an important transition at hand, during which it will lose its current ailing body. The soul is not completely happy to be encased in clay, and can feel exultation in the promise of the discarnate freedom and joy that it remembers and will soon experience again. From the past perspective, then, why am I dying? We must surely trust that death is fair. If we cannot trust this, then we cannot move forward in consciousness. If we believe in the possibility that death is arbitrary, then faith eludes us. We need to remember that faith is a choice. It requires both will and surrender. We must choose it if we are to be free of the fear of death. And if death is not arbitrary, then our earlier choices are surely the cause of its timing and manner. These choices arose from the superconscious and the unconscious parts of us, no doubt, but they were supervised by the conscious part. Some of the things we have thought, said, or done were at odds with our physical body's need for a healthy life. Eating badly, working stressfully, living in poor environments, and 1,000 other imperfections in lifestyle together cause the circumstances of death. Reaching insight into this is a real life achievement. Yet there is also an underlying psychological explanation for why we ate harmful substances and worked in an industrial zone, for example. Most would say they had no choice, but that is not an acceptable analysis for a self-empowered seeker of truth. We need to discover the mysterious processes whereby our imperfect psyche would rather let the body die off early than deal with its neurotic emotions. Dealing fully with this question is the evolution of consciousness. This is what life is. If we try to answer the question from the future, we will want to shift perception to examine how exactly it will be to our advantage as a soul to move forward now. There is only one rational explanation, and that is that in some important way the future is better for us with a new scenario. This body and life are no longer optimal for our purposes, so we need to move on now. Strong in faith, we trust that each occurrence in life is in service to our best long-term interests, and our death is no exception to this rule. We affirm that by releasing our grip on this life, we are willingly opening up to a better one.
Then I have a question relating to acceptance. You seem to be saying that the timing of death is up to the soul, and that the type of death is connected to our life story. Can you say more about this, please, James? I'm intrigued.
Yes, this whole question of free will is a very big one. We speak of free will and we actually intuitively demand free will. It's my life, I'll do what I want. Everybody has that kind of inner sense of acceptance of the knowledge that we ourselves are sovereign. That's what free will means. We'll do it our way. We'll make our own mistakes. So on some very profound level, we do accept that free will is a gift to us. And yet, if you examine this, it is not the case on the level of normal everyday life. For example, I want to fly, but I can't. My body won't let me. I want to go without food, but I can't because my body won't let me. I want not to pay taxes, but I can't because the government won't let me. And so on and so on and so on and so on. From the ego point of view, there is so much, so very much, which proves, and I'm saying that word ironically, that there is no free will in life. And in fact, the way people talk, they talk of God as an agency of supervision and intrusion. God will check out that everything's okay and take some action if it isn't. And yet we see that that's not what happens. The terrible things that happen in life, there's death and destruction, suffering, and these activities which cannot be the outpourings of a loving God. And people get angry with God because God does not intervene to save these hardships. But that's the whole point. God cannot give free will and then intervene. Either God has given free will or not. If not, then yeah, God can intervene, but we have no free will. If we have free will, then there is no intervention. That's what it means. So how can we square the circle here? How does that make sense? And the answer is that it makes sense at the level of soul. The unconscious part of us is just working our way through what's necessary without thinking about it. The heart beats, the hair grows, and we do things immediately without thinking, reactive behavior. So this unconscious part of ourselves is a big part of, why we move into a self-destructive cycle of life. The possibility for the unconscious sense of self to be brought into consciousness exists. And at the very highest level, you have some yogis and so on who can actually change their heartbeat and even the function of different organs. This isn't just an airy-fairy story that you might read written 500 years ago. I've come across at least one person that can do that, and I think more than one, to some extent. So we can actually bring unconscious processes into mind much, much more than we think. And most particular in that is that we can stop ourselves from bringing bad habits to bear upon our life. But we don't do that. And we don't do that for neurotic emotional reasons. In other words, egotism. It is the ego that prevents us from living well. And therefore, it is the ego that creates the circumstances, the type of death that we have. Now, I presented this argument to somebody and they said, but my mother died of a car crash. And how can that be her choice? And the child of my mother was in the car, her brother or something, I can't remember the details, also died in the car crash. How can that be the choice of the child? And it's not the choice of the ego of the child or the mother, obviously. But on some level, it suits the soul's purpose to leave this earth at that point. And the soul is that which is making the choice about how to leave. Now, when to leave. The choice about how to leave remains with the ego. The way we live, like, let's face it, we all live rather badly. You know, the body does not like what we eat. It does not like the lack of exercise that we get. It's not since we stopped walking, really, and we started farming thousands upon thousands of years ago that the body has been okay with that. You know, we were built to be walkers. We should be walking a long way every day to feel really healthy. And machines and all these kind of things and pharmaceuticals and all drugs, you know, no. We're not supposed to be doing that. And this creates this neurotic condition that we call normal life. And all of the imperfections in how we live pyramid up to create this type of circumstances which create our death. However, the timing of moving from this world to the next is given to the soul. The soul can claim free will and decide anything it chooses. It's not going to be possible to prove that. This is an article of faith. I've had it explained to me. It's the only thing that really makes sense and gets everything else to check out. So I think in the end you have to have faith in this, or it doesn't come to be real. The wazifa practice that I've associated with this keyword of acceptance is Ya Tawab, Ya Wadud. Now, Tawab carries a sense of ripening, of holding things in a certain limited sense until the time is right. And we have with this sense of acceptance and understanding that now is the time, that we are ripe, ready. It checks out. So, also with Wadud, got a sense of tuning in to the order of things. That's what ripeness is, isn't it? It's the right time is when everything just comes together. It's never going to be better. It wasn't better before. It won't be better again. This is when. So it's sort of tuning in to all of the variables in a situation. And that's what we need to do at this time of our lives. We need to tune in to all of the various pullings and pushings and realize that now it's time. Now, Wadud carries with it a sense of mutuality, of affinity, everything pulling together into a harmonious, greater sense of beingness. It's a lovely sort of sense of harmony and beauty, a loving vibration. So, Tawab Ya Wadud, returning to love, as a composite phrase, returning to love. And when we understand that that's what's happening, it makes it so much easier to just accept that. We're returning to love. Ya Tawab, Ya Wadud. Ya Tawab, Ya Wadud. Ya Tawwab, Ya Wadud, Ya Tawwab, Ya Wadud. Ameen.